Gentlemen, welcome to the regular meeting of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, January 15th, 2013. If you'll all rise, we'll start with the invocation by Pastor Andrew Calloway of the Cow Creek Community Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor.
Good morning. God's Word tells us the place and the purpose of the government when it says in 1 Peter 2:14, governors are sent by Him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. Would you please bow in prayer with me? Father in heaven, you are the God of the universe. You are the governor of this universe. Lord, you are in control of all things and all people. And you rule us by your great power and for your good pleasure. Lord, you set up times, you set up seasons, you appoint rulers, and you also depose them at your will. All who rule under you have been placed there by you for the good of the common people. I ask, Father, that you would bless the board members, the 5 board members this morning as they make decisions affecting the citizens of Shasta County. I ask that you would bless those who are new to the board. May they become acclimated with things that they're going to be doing and the decisions they'll be making. Lord, I ask that you would give them all wisdom in deciding on matters relating to the health and education and safety and transportation of the citizens of this county. Lord, may they work for the public's interest and not for their own personal gain. Lord, I pray for those who bear the sword that they would use it well to punish evildoers and deter unlawfulness and uphold justice and peace in this county. And Father, I pray for those who have come with grievances and questions that they would respond well when they hear the decisions that are made by this board. So Father, we ask that the proceedings and the decisions of this meeting might bring you all glory until the time when your perfect government comes. In the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Please join me in a salute the flag. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Calloway. Thank you, Supervisor Giacomini. Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board pursuant to the Brown Act. Action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive the comments and, if deemed necessary, to refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and or to schedule a matter on a subsequent board agenda. I realize that many in the audience this morning are probably here to address item R6. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to us now at open time period? All right, then. We'll move forward. Thank you. We'll move forward with the regular calendar. Please come forward, then.
Talk on R6 now or later? No, later.
Later. Okay. Oh, we do have 2 people want to speak now? All right. The first is Ms. Pringle, followed by Ms. Coulthart. So, if you'll make your way over. Will you manage these, Leonard? And if you'd identify yourself, please.
My name's Jeanette Pringle.
Thank you. Could you turn the microphone?
Oh, not used to this. Okay, I wanted to speak on agenda number 6. I took regular conventional prescribed medicines by my doctors and stuff for 13 years. And finally I ended up in the hospital due to those with my heart stopping. So I became a cannabis user then. I still never have smoked it. I've ingested it. And it works quite well for what I'm taking it for, which is pain at this time. I understand that there's a possibility that it would be zoned out of outdoor growing in the county. I find that just almost ridiculous because this is such a rural county. I see no need for it. And the original act is that people would be able to provide it for themselves. Last time I was in a collective was a couple years ago, and an ounce of cannabis was $300. I know people that for pain are using an ounce a week. And these people I know are on a fixed income, disability, or something of that nature. And they could not afford $1,200 a month for that stuff. But their Medicare or whatever insurance they have would pick up the tab for the same pharmaceuticals that put me in the hospital that they've also found are not helping them. So I would be much in favor of not interfering with with people growing it for their own use, or even to share with others.
Thank you.
Hello,
Good morning.
my name is Lita Coulthart. I'm a medical cannabis user. In 2006, I broke my neck and I was paralyzed for a short time before I was miraculously brought back by a great surgeon. Unfortunately, like a lamp cord, I have a few broken wires in there. I have some lingering problems. I have myoclonic dystonia. It's very painful. It is not treated by any conventional medications. I've been offered the morphine pump as an implant. I'd rather not sit as a zombie. I do use medical cannabis, mostly edibles. I do vaporize. My problem with this is that they already closed my co-op in Anderson. I can no longer get it there. I'm not allowed to grow it in Anderson outdoors anywhere. And the people that are now providing for me grow in rural Shasta County, and now this is going to affect them as well. I also cannot afford $1,200 a month. And as far as I can see, the only complaints and the reasoning for this that I have seen or heard of is that people complain that there is an odor. Well, I have to tell you, the guy that dumps a truckload of manure on the corner for his massive lawn affects my life more than a couple of plants would affect somebody, and for a much longer period of time. That's just one instance. There's many. How about the guy who's garbage burning once a month? That's toxic. I know a guy that's burning plastic out in his backyard. Okay, those are toxic situations that people should not be inhaling. Not a flowering plant. The oak tree across the street sent the lady to the hospital because she got hives from it. Okay, these are just instances of how environmental nuisances are tolerated by our society. Now you're going to talk about crime. Okay, I would like to really see somebody pull up some statistics and show me how crime is affecting rural communities. I'd even take a suburban community if they can show me that there's an actual, real increase in personal property value crimes associated with somebody growing medical cannabis. And no, I'm not talking about the guy who has 700 plants in his backyard, two Dobermans and a pit bull and a shotgun. I'm talking about somebody like me, a little old lady who has one little plant or two little plants in her backyard just so she can get a little something for her brownies. Okay, I can't afford to go and pay $10 a gram. Okay, 1 gram is one treatment. 3 times a day, that's 3 grams a day. No, Medicare is not going to pay for it. Medicaid is not going to pay for it. I can't go out and get a job. I can't supplement my income for that. Okay, and I think it's totally unfair that people who live out in rural counties now have to worry about a crackdown on their property and their rights to grow something. I'm not talking about the people who are making big money and rolling in the dough and buying their new Cadillacs. I'm talking about the simple people who are supposed to be protected by the 215, who says that I have safe access to my medication. Safe access to my medication. Not that it should cost me $25,000 to build a special grow house outside of my property that's protected by an armed guard.
Ma'am, thank you very much for your observation. We'll now move to the regular calendar. R1, consider adopting a resolution which recognizes Shasta County's Employee of the Year. And we've invited Supervisor Baugh to read the proclamation.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to read this on behalf of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors. Before I do, I just want to share a few of my own words, and then we'll read the proclamation or the resolution. Christine, in the room, if you've looked around you, you've probably noticed you have people from all walks of your life. You have representatives from the Planning Commissioner, you have the local editor, you have city manager and staff from the City of Anderson, you have representatives from the Cottonwood Community Center, I see Mantor House, I see Board of our council members. That really speaks highly of you, because all of those folks are the people that you have involved your life in as you represented Shasta County. And it has been my pleasure to serve with you in many of those projects and instances. In front of our own home is a trial walk that Christine spearheaded to safeguard the lives of our children as they cross the street. You have been amazing. I'm practically just busting a gut up here because you're representing the South County and you're representing all of Shasta County so well. Sincerely, from this supervisor, I thank you. On behalf of the entire board, let me read this. A resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Shasta recognizing Christine Haggard, Community Organizer, Health and Human Services Agency, Public Health, as Shasta County's 2012 Employee of the Year. And I have to tell you, folks, we have something like 1,650 employees. It is significant among that entire group to be recognized. Whereas the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has adopted the Shasta County Employee Recognition Program to identify exceptional employees who deserve to be recognized and honored for their contribution to county service. And whereas such recognition is given to the employee meeting the criteria of the program, namely exceptional customer service, professionalism, high ethical standards, initiative, innovation, teamwork, productivity, and service as a role model for other public employees. And whereas the Shasta County Employee Recognition Committee has considered all nominations for the Shasta County 2012 Employee of the Year. Now therefore be it resolved that Ms. Christine Haggard, Community Organizer, Health and Human Services Agency, Public Health, is hereby named Shasta County 2012 Employee of the Year. I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Terry Fields, you're up.
Okay, good morning, Chairman Kehoe, members of the board. Terry Fields Hostler, Branch Director of Public Health, Health and Human Services Agency. Well, I am extremely honored to be here this morning to share a little bit more about an extraordinary county employee, Christine Haggard. Christine's worked for Shasta County Public Health for 17 years, both as a community health advocate and now as one of our stellar community organizers. As Supervisor Baugh mentioned, much of Christine's work has focused in the South County the last 10 years, as she was an instrumental team member of the HEAC team, Healthy Eating and Active Communities grant that was funded by the California Endowment. She has formed, as you can see by the audience, exceptional working partnerships with multiple school districts, farmers, park boards, food banks, city councils, and numerous nonprofit organizations, all with the intent to help individuals and groups take action to identify and improve the health of their community. Several noteworthy accomplishments for Christine include her support of the Happy Valley Farm Trail, South County Farmers Markets, the Volante Park Neighborhood Project, and a special passion for all that know Christine is her ability to empower and engage youth. As such, she's partnered with Anderson Partnership for Healthy Children in the city of Anderson to develop a strong and thriving teen center. She's also worked with youth in several school districts around Safe Routes to School projects and organized youth from New Tech High School to get involved in the city's pedestrian master plan and park committee. Christine's worked with youth to help establish the Healthy Kids Choices checkout aisle, first in Anderson and now in the Reading Walmart. She's very involved in our Healthy Shasta sustainable community efforts, where she helps promote a community where the healthy choice is the easy choice. When you ask fellow employees and community members, many here today, to describe Christine, certain words get repeated over and over. Dedicated, hard worker, a true team player, passionate and enthusiastic, humble, kind-hearted, and always a voice for the community. Christine Haggard is certainly a county employee to be proud of.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Yes, let's show our appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to receive comments from a council member from the city of Anderson, Ms. Susie Baugh.
I'm Susie Baugh, and I'm an Anderson City Council member. Christine. I have been very honored to work with Christine as a planning commissioner, and she is amazing. Her dedication to looking into the different items that we've had to go through. She is a question person. She asks a million questions, and they're usually great questions. I've learned a lot from her. And I just want to say I am so proud to have worked with her. She is an amazing employee and just a real credit to the South County.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Baugh. This is a big day, Christine.
Big day. Big day.
You know, this is tantamount to the Super Bowl, in a sense. It's Shasta County's answer to the Super Bowl. We have over 1,600 employees work for Shasta County, and you're number one. Thank you for all your efforts. You're number one. Christine, on behalf of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors and the residents of Shasta County, it's a pleasure to present you with the Shasta County Employee of the Year 2012 flag. Christine Haggard, Community Organizer, in recognition of your exemplary performance, outstanding attitude, and consistent superior service to the citizens of Shasta County. And this is signed by Supervisors Keogh, Modi, Giacomini, Chappelle, and Baugh. Congratulations. Now we have some other awards to present to you. In addition to this high-quality plaque, we have a houseboat vacation gift certificate provided by Bridge Bay Resort. Got a $250 Department Head Forum Award for you. Got a $100 award from the Mid-Management Bargaining Unit, and it is this in this. So here we have it. We'll just set this on top there.
Okay.
And then we'd like to thank all of the donors that provided these recognitions. Now, the next part is the most important part. We're going to give you a little opportunity to address your colleagues, the residents of Shasta County, and the board members. So step on over here.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, first, I want to say thank you for this generous acknowledgement. Boy, my big goal was to share some messages today and not cry, and so far I'm keeping the tears back, but that just shows the passion that I have, and the passion is part of the reason why I feel that there's been success brought to me. So thank you for all of those acknowledgments, the incredibly kind words and generous statements about me. So with that being said, I want to say that my passion and my drive really comes from the people, and some of those people are my family and friends. And if I could just ask my family and close friends to stand up for a second. I have a couple grandchildren here. I have a number that are not here. But I also have family and friends from all ages. And really that's where my drive comes, is I want to be a part of making our community and this county a better place. So thank you for being here, friends and family. I'm very appreciative of that. And they get to see the other side of me, which we didn't talk about today, and so I feel thankful for that too. I really want to be clear about the message that I want to share mostly today, is that this appreciation and success and all the acknowledgement that I heard from all of you comes from teamwork. I could not do any of the work that I do alone. As a community organizer, it's not my role to do the work I do alone. It's my role to work with the community, engage the community, and involve everyone. And I feel fortunate to have that role. It's something that for the most days I feel fortunate that I get paid to do it. There are days where, boy, am I getting paid enough? But those days are far and few between. And it's my community partners that bring the success. When Terry was talking about the projects and the things that I've been involved in, I was thinking of faces and names and the principals and the superintendents and the teachers and the students in the classes, and I was thinking of the staff at the city and our council members and the residents, the grandmas and the know-it-all lady that sits on her porch and knows everything in the community that really benefits me when I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to help them make changes. And it's all the people in Shasta County, and I have that role that allows me to not only serve the people, but work with the people, and that's where the success comes from. So it's important to me that I share that with you. I also want to say that public health has supported this community organizer role. It's different when people in my own family say, what do you do as an organizer? It's hard to explain. But public health has seen vision and knew that we could work with the people, and it's really the people that are going to make changes in their lives. And our goal in public health is to serve all and improve the health of the whole community, and we couldn't do that alone. And I like to give this example that if we were to hire, safety is really important to us. And in every place I work, we want a safe neighborhood, a safe community, safe schools. And we could hire more law enforcement to try to increase our safety. We don't have money for that, but if we could, but we know, it's been proven that the best way to improve communities and improve the safety is to get the people involved, get the residents, the neighbors, the people that work in the community, and get them involved and engaged. And that's how we're going to improve the safety in our community. And that goes across the board with health. The more we engage people and involve people, the healthier our communities will be. And it feels really good to be somebody that gets to be a part of that. So with that being said, I just want to thank also you, the Board of Supervisors, because I know that you support public health in the past and their insight for a community organizer role, but also to look for sustaining those community organizer roles, because it really is the way we're going to get things done, especially in budget times the way they are. The more we can get the people to be part of the solution, the better. And in my opinion, as an organizer,
We have over 175,000 resources out there, over 175,000 people who can be part of the solution for answers to making a healthier and safer community for us here in Shasta County. And on behalf of all of the public health community organizers, I want to thank you for giving us that opportunity to work with those folks and be a part of the solution. That being said, wow, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming and supporting me today.
Would you like to introduce the members of your immediate family?
Sure, I will do that. So I do want to introduce my immediate family by name today, and I have my husband Chris is here this morning. I have my sister Michelle here, my oldest son Todd, his beautiful wife, and
just keep going.
Beautiful wife, and one of our
Members of proud military.
Yes. It's like, she's in the Air Force. What do you call that?
We sometimes call it the Air Force.
The Air Force. And her name is Robin.
Robin.
My grandson Jake. I have some great nephews that are in the back of the room and a niece or two that are in the back of the room. And I'm feeling very fortunate because I feel like I see so many other people that are like family members to me and they're community partners that I work with every day. So thank you all.
Thank you, Christine. Now let's take some photographs.
Okay.
Why don't we come over here? You may wish to hold the plaque. And we're going to do two series. We're going to do one first with the board members. And Terry, please. And then the second, we'll invite your family to come up. Selected members, of course. Nieces and nephews may not make the cut. So here we go. Let's have a larger group photograph with your immediate family, please.
She's my best friend and been along with me for about 30 years.
You can have whoever you want, Christine. Go there in front.
Well, let's hear it for Christine.
Look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, continuing with our football analogy, we've just had the Super Bowl. Now we're talking about the divisional playoffs. And our next agenda item is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Shasta recognizing Benjamin Hanna, District Attorney's Office, as the January 2013 Employee of the Month. Whereas the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has adopted the Shasta County Employee Recognition Program to identify exceptional employees who deserve to be recognized and honored for their contributions to county service. Whereas such recognition is given to employees meeting the criteria of the program, namely exceptional customer service, professionalism, high ethical standards, initiative, innovation, teamwork, productivity, and service as a role model for other public employees. And whereas the Shasta County Employees Recognition Committee has considered all nominations for Shasta County Employee of the Month, now therefore be it resolved that Mr. Benjamin Hanna, Senior Deputy District Attorney, District Attorney's Office, is hereby named Shasta County Employee of the Month for January 2013. And be it further resolved that Mr. Hanna is a role model for other public employees. He understands and cares about the Shasta County District Attorney's Office and the members of the public, which displays through his day-to-day efforts. Mr. Hanna is well deserving of this Employee of the Month recognition, duly passed and adopted this 15th day of January 2013 by the Board of the Shasta County by the following vote. We'll indicate the vote, and this is signed on behalf of the Board of Supervisors by the Chairman, David A. Keogh. May we have a motion to this effect?
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. We approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Carlton, Shasta County District Attorney, Mr. Josh Laundrie, Assistant. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Josh Lowry, Chief Deputy District Attorney, Shasta County, and Steve Carlton, the District Attorney of Shasta County. Ben Hanna is a Senior Deputy District Attorney with our office. He's a 12-year veteran of the office. He handles felony prosecutions, including the most complex cases in the office, and the most serious cases, including homicides. Ben has distinguished himself over the past years through his dependability, his positive attitude, and his strong work ethic. He has received the appreciation and respect of his fellow employees and his fellow prosecutors. And in summary, Ben is simply an outstanding employee, very deserving of this award, and we're very proud to have him on board with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add that my first contact with Mr. Hanna was when I was on the other side of the council table, and I can assure you that when you had Mr. Hanna as a prosecutor in your case, you better look for a plea bargain. He was tough but fair and ethical. Thank you.
Very nice. Well, let's invite Mr. Hanna up, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we can show our appreciation to Mr. Hanna. Mr. Hanna, on behalf of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors and the residents of Shasta County, it is a pleasure to present you with this plaque designating you as the Employee of the Month, January 2013, Benjamin Hanna, Senior Deputy District Attorney. In recognition of your overall professionalism, commitment, and high personal standards in your service to the citizens of Shasta County. And this is signed by Supervisors Kehoe, Modi, Giacomini, Chappelle, and Baugh. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Additionally, we have some gifts for you. A rosewood pen gift set. Shasta County is engraved on the pen, and the gift box is engraved with the Shasta County emblem. A DVD of this award presentation, and a gift certificate by the Mid-Management Bargaining Unit to a local restaurant. A gift certificate donated by the Department Head Forum to the Outback Restaurant, and a gift certificate to a local restaurant donated by the Deputy Sheriff's Association. And we certainly thank these donors for these important things. Now, Mr. Hanna, would you like to address all of us?
Sure.
Okay, I mean, you get paid for doing this.
Exactly.
This is great.
I speak for a living. Thank you, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. I appreciate the recognition, and it's an honor to be recognized. And I appreciate the recognition that District Attorney Carlton gave and Chief Deputy DA Lowry. I appreciate them nominating me for this award. But it's a true privilege to work as a prosecutor in the Shasta County District Attorney's Office. This is where I grew up as a prosecutor. This is the only place I've been a prosecutor, and I wouldn't do anything else. I love working with the people, and really what makes this so special is I feel like I'm supported by not only the administration in the office, but all the great employees we have in the District Attorney's Office. These are challenging times for law enforcement, but it's good to be part of a group that's so dedicated to serving the community, serving public safety, and doing the right thing and protecting the community. I'm fortunate to work with a great group of people in the DA's office, and I'm also fortunate that one of those great people that works in the DA's office is my wife, Kelly, and it's great to have her here along with my mother-in-law and father-in-law, Russ Kafel and Joni Kafel. So I'm proud that they're here to see this, and I'm appreciative of the District Attorney and Chief Deputy DA and the Board of Supervisors for this recognition. Thank you very much.
We take a picture and I invite the board to come down, please. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Good job. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, we have a trifecta of awards. R3 is the Shasta County Board of Supervisors recognition of Planning Commissioner Mr. Dick Franks. we've invited Mr. Modi to make this presentation. Mr. Modi.
Thank you, Chair Keogh. I'd like to start by asking Rick Simon, the Assistant Planning Director in the Planning Department, who also serves, coordinates the Planning Commission meetings, and we'll start out with him and then I'll have a few words.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi, Chairman Kehoe, and members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce Dick Franks, Planning Commissioner, who has served the Planning Commission for a number of years now and done an excellent job. Dick Franks was appointed to the Planning Commission by Supervisor Modi in 2009 and is the Commission Chairman for the current year, 2013. He holds a PhD in electrical engineering from Cal Berkeley and has taught math and physics. Mr. Franks spent the majority of his career as an analyst and manager with AT&T Bell Laboratories. On the Commission, he consistently asks probing questions and gets to the heart of an issue, as you might expect from a trained engineer. As Commission Chairman in 2011, he presided over several contentious projects and effectively balanced the interests of applicants and the public in conducting fair and meaningful hearings. Mr. Franks is active within the community as well as a member of Rotary and the Stewardship Committee of his local church. He exemplifies the best qualities in a planning commissioner and was awarded and recognized by the northern section of the California County Planning Commissioners Association last October as Planning Commissioner of the Year for 2012 by the northern section. Dick, it's been a pleasure working with you, and on behalf of everybody in resource management, congratulations.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to recognize you for your service on the Planning Commission. Obviously, you make me look really good for the person who picked you on the commission. But the reason I asked Dick to take the position when I had to make a replacement when I came on the board was I wanted someone I knew who would get in the details, study all information, come prepared, listen to the people who came to talk, try to look at all the issues, and do what was best for Shasta County. And as you heard, he has his PhD. He's someone who's very analytical, but he brought those other things with him as well as the fairness and the openness to the conversation. I think that's what everybody wants out of their planning commissioner, someone who will listen to all the information and then make up their best decision. So it's really a pleasure for me to have someone who's only been a commissioner for about 4 years now and already being recognized throughout the northern section. So congratulations, Dick, on a great job. And we just have a recognition plaque for you that recognizes you as the the commissioner, Planning Commissioner of the Year for the northern section. Thank you, Dick, for a great job.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate this. I've always felt it was very important to contribute to your community, and I keep doing that, both locally and a little broader. I have to say I was really surprised by this recognition that I got from the association. I just thought I was doing my job.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi. Item R4 on the regular calendar, consider appointing Eugene Parham to the Shasta County Planning Commission as nominated by District 3 Supervisor Giacomini for a 4-year term to January 2017. Anything you'd like to add at this time?
No, I think Gene is very well qualified, and he will serve very well with Mr. Franks on the Planning Commission, and I look forward to their good work. Would you like me to make a motion? I would so move that we appoint Eugene Parham to serve on the Planning Commission for District 3.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. This morning, we're going to remove item C9 and C14. Are there any others? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. In regards to item C13, which is a waste tire amnesty event grant, for the record, I declare that my wife, Susie Boss, serves as a member of the Anderson City Council. She receives compensation for that job, and we have no personal interest or finances involved in waste tire amnesty events.
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar with the exception of C9 and C14?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item C9 under Law and Justice. Sheriff, take the following actions. Accept donation of a police canine and canine handler training in the amount of $8,500 from Shasta County Friends of Canine. And 2, authorize the auditor controller to make any required recording of receipt of the donation. No additional general fund impact. Sheriff Prasenko, thank you for joining us this morning. I move this to the regular calendar to give you an opportunity to recognize the generosity of the donor.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. Tom Prasenko, Shasta County Sheriff. The Friends of the Shasta County Canine is a nonprofit organization which accepts donations from a number of people or other organizations. We have been very fortunate to have many of our dogs purchased by this organization dating back many, many years. This particular dog was purchased last year. This is a little bit of cleanup language in which Friends donated $8,500 for the purchase of the canine, and it's a cross-trained canine. It is working on the streets now, and cross-trained means that it's used for protection work, suspect searches, and also cross-trained in the detection of narcotics. The dogs are very beneficial to assist the officers, both in searching for persons, such as criminals that have run away, and for searching in narcotics, whether it be in cars, homes, or other places. We recently received another donation that was made to Friends by an anonymous person in the amount of many thousands of dollars, $12,000 to be exact, in which will go towards the purchase of a canine as well. So the generosity of Shasta County and its citizens is always usually front page news in many, many organizations, from Women's Refuge, Good News Rescue Mission, the Family Justice Center, and many, many other deserving organizations. And it just speaks volumes about the generosity of our citizens here in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Prasenko. Any comments or observations, questions? Chair will entertain a motion concerning disposition of this matter. Thank you, Bill. Second?
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second to approve the contribution. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Sheriff Prasenko.
Thank you very much.
Next item is C14, Williamson Act Contract 12001, MacArthur, Fall River Mills area.
Good morning, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. Rick Simon, Assistant Director of Resource Management. This is a recontracting, if you will. A couple of members of the MacArthur family, George and Christine, have applied to separate their holdings within the family holdings to put in their own name for financing purposes and others. There was a restrictive covenant on the overall ranch property that was in the Williamson Act. It's been in the Williamson Act for 15 to 20 years now. And in order to put their holdings in their own name, the procedure is to enter into a separate contract. That would acknowledge the fact that their properties stand alone in terms of qualifying for Williamson Act contracts from the rest of the ranch, and in fact their two parcels individually would each qualify for a separate contract if they were to be sold separately. Again, part of the criteria of the county's program. The new contract would also allow them to dispose of the covenant that is now on their properties and part of their title. The covenant originally was placed on the larger holdings, indicating that if separate parcels could not stand alone under contract, that they would have to be taken out of the Williamson Act in order to be sold separately. Now they have, because of their agricultural practices, they have reclassified, or their properties have been reclassified, and now each individual parcel does qualify on its own. So that restrictive covenant is no longer required to be placed on their properties. Again, the way of getting rid of that restrictive covenant is to enter into a new contract where the covenant would not apply. So in essence, that's what they've applied for. This would not be putting any new lands into Williamson Act. It would not be taking any lands out of Williamson Act. It's simply a transfer of title and ownership under the contract.
Same amount of acreage.
Exactly.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Simon? Chair would entertain a motion concerning disposition of C-14.
I would move that we adopt the action.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the staff recommendation. Further discussion of the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Simon. We'll now move to general government. R5, Administrative Office Board of Supervisors. Receive a legislative update and consider action on specific legislation related to Shasta County's legislative platform, and receive supervisors' reports on countywide issues. Mr. Lees, please.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Let's start with supervisors' reports. To my left, please, Ms. Jan.15.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. I have nothing to report today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Modi, please.
Thank you, Chair. I attended via phone the Sierra Sac Valley EMS board meeting and have the minutes if anybody wishes to review those upstairs. Also, yesterday via phone was part of a conference on the Northern Sac Valley Integrated Regional Water Management Governance Subcommittee. The discussion is centering around what future form this board will take as we move forward in the next year, and our funding from Prop 84 and Prop 50 run out. Something that I think that the board should at least start thinking about or considering what we might want to do down the line is if we want to fund this committee, this board forward, it will take some funds from the 6 counties. We can either do very little and have staff try to do what they can. There's sort of a middle-of-the-road figure of about $15,000 per county, or we could have all of it done by outside consultants, which is in the neighborhood of about $35,000 a year per county. Just something for just to consider as we move forward. We'll be bringing something to the board probably in the next month or so to have further discussion on this.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi. Supervisor Baugh and I attended the Shasta County Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Advisory Board meeting. I have that material in this binder. It will be available for your study and perusal. Also, Mr. Lees and I made presentations to the Leadership Reading Group. It's a very spirited group. They had a lot of good questions. We primarily talked about the budget process. Supervisor Baugh, please.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. I want to mention the name Velma Crane to you. It was my pleasure this last Saturday to present on behalf of the Board of Supervisors a happy birthday plaque, and you think that sounds unusual, but every time you turn 100 in Shasta County, we'll be happy to present a plaque to you as well. This lady was completely engaging and humorous, just loved the presentation, and I congratulate her on her birthday. I also attended this last week the land use, actually yesterday, land use fact meeting. And I'm sure the board is aware that I am heading off to Sacramento for the Rural Counties meeting. Should any supervisor have an additional item that you would like to, or items that you'd like to have me present or discuss at RCRC in Sacramento, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. I have nothing to report.
Thank you. We'll now move to item R6, is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Shasta to consider amendments to the Shasta County zoning plan concerning medical marijuana cultivation. Mr. Lees, I'm going to ask you to frame this board report for us, and then we'll move from there.
You bet. Thank you, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. I take you back to a little over a year ago when there were law changes within the, actually there's been many years and many law changes within the state of California. But because of the potential conflict in some areas between state and federal laws, there was a lot of uncertainty out there about how to enforce and to allow different activities to happen as it relates to this issue. And so because of that, the board took action to propose an ordinance, and adopt an ordinance actually, where we would put some parameters around that which we find to be legal. With that being said, at that time, and again this is over a year ago, at that time the discussion led to, we're not sure if you know, the things are going to accomplish what we've set out to accomplish. And so because of that, the board had directed me to come back with a review of how we've done, and around November of 2012, you asked me to put something on the agenda for January, mid-January, to determine if we need to make any adjustments to those ordinances and zoning charges. Because of that, before you see some recommendations to consider as it relates to more defining and more accurately defining exactly what the ordinance entails. And I point out that we're asking you to consider adopting a resolution of intent. Now, in today's discussion, and after you hear the testimony of the audience, this is your opportunity to say, yes, we want to add some things. No, we don't want to add some things. But I want to just explain a second the resolution of intent. And that is that if the board decides in whatever design to adopt a resolution of intent to change existing ordinances, that is not in the process. That's the beginning of the process. And from that point, it goes to the, I mean, there's some notices that file. It goes to the Planning Commission where it's heard from the Planning Commission, and they determine what impacts it will have on other areas, other ordinances, other zoning regulations. And then they make a recommendation, and it's vetted in the public there also. And then they make the recommendation, it comes back to the Board of Supervisors. Well, then you will have the final opportunity and say to either again refine it again and send it back, or to adopt the recommendations from the Planning Commission. So what we're asking for you to do today is to listen to the testimony, consider this resolution of intent, and then make any changes that you might find appropriate. And then it gets sent back to the Planning Commission. With that, we've got a couple folks that I would like to come up and explain exactly how we arrived at some of the recommendations that we made in here. And first of all, we're going to hear from our Public Health Director, Dr. Andrew Deckert, following which we will hear from Resource Management, our Planning Department, and that will be Rick Simon. And then following Rick, we will hear from the Sheriff, Tom Basenko.
Before we proceed, Supervisor Chappelle, do you have any observations you'd like to make, sir?
Mr. Lees? Mr. Lees, in this amendment, is there anything that puts restrictions on the current regulations?
As it relates to marijuana cultivation, you mean?
Growing, well, yeah, marijuana cultivation, yes. Or is this going to end up just being an advisory amendment?
If it goes to the process of the Planning Commission, and they'll make changes or observations and listen to testimony, as you will today, if the Board of Supervisors adopts these recommended changes, it does change the ordinance as it sits today, whereas it confines and makes some different alterations to the ordinance today. So it does make changes to the existing ordinance.
This is the first step in the change then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's clarify, Mr. Lees. Regardless of the decision that this board may or may not make today, there will be subsequent off-ramps for the board and the community, correct?
Correct. It absolutely has to come back to the board after vetting through the public and through the Planning Commission before a final adoption of these changes can take place.
Thank you. So, our first speaker.
With that, I'd like to introduce our Public Health Officer for Shasta County, Dr. Andrew Deckert.
Good morning, board members. I'm Andrew Deckert. I'm the Shasta County Health Officer working with the Health and Human Service Agency. And as a physician, part of my job is to educate our community about the population health effects of marijuana. From a health perspective, it doesn't matter if it's legal, illegal, if it's under Compassionate Use Act, or if it someday becomes legal for recreational use in California. My job is still the same, to tell people what the health effects are and have people have informed information about that. Smoked marijuana is not a harmless substance. Marijuana is hazardous to physical health, mental health, and community health on a population basis. Physically, it slows reaction time and leads to increased injuries, like impaired driving as a common example. And like cigarettes, it causes multiple lung problems. Mentally, it decreases judgment and impulse control, can lead to violence, and can trigger mental health problems like anxiety, schizophrenia, conduct, and bipolar disorders. A certain percent become addicted, and that's more likely in those starting at an early age, which particularly concerns me. At a community level, youth here are increasingly finding marijuana easy to see and obtain, incorrectly perceive it as having minimal health risk, and marijuana is the primary drug of choice for Shasta County youth admitted to our local drug treatment programs. There are significant academic achievement costs and productivity issues in the workplace for employers and hidden costs of marijuana use to taxpayers. One of the big issues is inaccurate youth perception of marijuana as a harmless norm, since it's visible now in many areas of our urban core. 50% of Shasta County 11th graders who use marijuana state that they started marijuana at between age 10 and 14. This is a time when the connections in the brain are being set into life patterns, and marijuana appears for some youth to be a gateway drug to other illicit drugs. Allowing growth only inside accessory structures will help a lot in decreasing youth perception of marijuana as normal and harmless. Will help delay those decisions to experiment or not to when their developing brains have had more chance to mature. And for these health reasons, Public Health supports today's staff report recommendations. I have for you a handout which I'll pass to the clerk of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Decker. Next speaker, please. Mr. Lees. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Rick Simon, Assistant Director of Resource Management. What I hope to offer to you is kind of a perspective of how the ordinance has impacted, and more than the ordinance, its enforcement has impacted resource management, code enforcement division within our department. Obviously, there are no easy answers to getting a handle on this issue and having effective enforcement. The bottom line, I think, is not so much changes in the ordinance one way or another, but having the resources and the personnel to be able to enforce the rules that we do adopt. As an example, we are at about, there are over 200 complaints received last year before and during the growing season. Of those, we were able to respond in terms of opening violation files to about 167 of those. Of that 167, we actually had the resources and personnel to be able to investigate 100 of those. So we're at about 50% response rate compared to the number of complaints that are coming in. Overall compliance of those 100, we find to be at about 15%. So one of the issues is that it's probably incumbent upon the medical marijuana community itself to do a better job of self-regulating. If we are at 15% compliance, in other words, of the cases that we investigated, we found about 15% to be in compliance with the county's ordinance. That means that there are an awful lot of them who are creating more issues and more problems, which leads to the kinds of discussions that we're having today. In other words, the county feels then that it needs to do more to get that situation under control. During the growing season, if you will, last year, actually starting in about January, because we are now on the eve of yet another growing season for 2013. Between the time of January to about last October, we had, because we devoted essentially 100% of a full-time code enforcement officer to the medical marijuana issue, we had 20 files that were already in nuisance abatement proceedings that were let go because we did not have the resources to be able to follow through on those. We are in a position right now of having to reestablish the facts and the evidence on each of those 20 cases in order to bring those back into the focus for nuisance abatement. We had 88 new complaints that are not related to marijuana cultivation that came into our office during that time, which we have had absolutely no opportunity to follow up on. Altogether, we have over 1,500 violations in various aspects of investigation, enforcement, and follow-through, or that are pending. Obviously, we've got one full-time allocated code enforcement officer that is absolutely overwhelmed by plenty busy with the existing complaint and nuisance abatement program, let alone the addition of the marijuana cultivation program. It just cannot be done effectively with the staffing that we have. We believe that we can do changes to the ordinance. Again, there are no easy solutions. It's a delicate situation in that the outdoor growing season is limited and yet plentiful in terms of being able to take plants that are started in a greenhouse, planted early on after the last frost, and harvested through the fall. That gives us a very limited amount of time to intervene and to inject ourselves in our program effectively. The hearing process through nuisance abatement, the notifications that are required, all of those things take allotted amounts of time that cannot be shortcut. There are some things that are being suggested in the proposal that for the board's consideration that might speed some of those processes along, but even still, there are probably 6 weeks to 2 months worth of procedural time that just needs to be spent from initiation to the point where action can actually be taken. So we are limited in that respect as well. I can answer any questions. That is kind of a summary of how resource management has been affected by, and specifically the code enforcement program has been affected by the current ordinance. And again, it's not so much the contents of the ordinance, but the lack of the ability to effectively, put resources and personnel towards that program.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Supervisor Baugh has a question. Bill, do you have a question of this speaker?
I only have one question of the speaker. Thank you, Chairman. They do have a Google map that you can Google down on the various homes and houses. Do you guys use that facility at all to detect the illegal growing?
We absolutely do. We use all of those kinds of resources that are available through the internet. We also have flyover capabilities through the sheriff's office as warranted.
Other questions of Mr. Simon?
he has one more.
Yeah, of Dr. Deckard, right?
No, I just have the previous speaker.
Yeah.
Is that okay? We're good, okay. I just had an observation on the previous speaker. He was alluding to the fact of the negativeness about the marijuana. And I do realize that there is a lot of negativeness and health aspects that are negative on marijuana. Also, there is a lot of negative aspects about taking prescription drugs, okay? And they can be just as cute or more than the effects of the marijuana. I also want to express my personal feelings. I want to separate the teenage use, the adolescent use from the adult use. I think that the teenage use is horrible. It does affect the brain. It affects the growth, and it definitely will chemically change the brain on younger brains that are developing. And so we see it rampant in the high schools here. And I would like to see if there's any ways we can put restrictions to it and put an education system together that would actually let the students know that this could hamper them for life, okay? It's like getting in a horrible accident and having a broken back or neck or something that affects you for the rest of your life, and you have that handicap you have to live with. So I want to make sure we separate that, because he did mention the teenage. I think we need to separate the adult, and I think we need to separate the juvenile. Those are two different issues as far as I'm concerned. Also, I think that this is an issue that has extreme importance to the users, and I think that we need to make decisions that we don't restrict their ability to be able to purchase. I think we need to make the decision that satisfies the people, though, that do restrict some of the ongoing uses that are, I'm going to call it abusive for not anything else to say, okay? And then those are the areas I think we probably need to go after. I hope that we can make it a panel, or we can form something to where we can get some sort of advisory where everybody gets their opinion in, so they get heard, so they get their voice. So when we come up to the solution, it's going to be fair and equitable for everybody. Thank you.
Sheriff Pasenko.
I do have a question.
Oh. We have a question from Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe, for Mr. Simon. You pointed out two areas, major areas of concern. One is the abatement process and the time that it takes, and I want to focus on that one especially. I think I heard you say that if we were to move in the proposed direction, there would still be a time requirement of somewhere between 6 weeks and 2 months. Can you explain that and kind of give us an example of how that would work? And also, what is the time requirement on the current ordinance, and is that part of the challenge of enforcement?
I can explain a bit, and perhaps County Council can add to what I'm saying here as well. There is a notification process in the nuisance abatement where if first we need to send an inspector out to document what is there on the site. If it is determined that a nuisance does exist and every aspect of the zoning code where the cultivation ordinance resides, any violation of that code is determined to be a nuisance per se. So that determination has to be made. Then the owner of the property and/or resident needs to be notified that there is a nuisance on the property and given a certain amount of time to abate that nuisance voluntarily. And the absolute minimum, according to the code right now, is 5 days to do that. If that is not done, and again we need to send an inspector out to verify whether or not that has been done after a period of time. Generally, I will say that we usually give more than 5 days as well. So, but that can be shaved down, as I understand it, to the minimum that's in the code. The second inspection will make a determination as to whether or not the abatement has occurred. Then they get a notice to abate, and that would be we create a case and forward that to the county counsel's office. All of those things take time to get in order and get the evidence that is required to present a case. County council will then send a notification to the owner, a notice to abate. and then again given a certain amount of time to either abate the condition or to request a hearing. If a hearing is requested, then we need to set up the hearing officer and present a time frame where we give the owner an opportunity to present his own case and to formulate his own case. And that, again, takes a minimum or a prescribed amount of time, a minimum amount of time before the hearing can occur. Once the hearing occurs, then a determination can be made by the hearing officer. As I understand it, that hearing is final, and that will either be concurrence that yes, a nuisance exists, and then a determination as to how that should be abated most effectively. One option is that the county would step in and do the abatement and then charge those fees to the property owner as part of the property tax, or excuse me, as a lien on the property. There may be other options available as well, depending on the facts of the particular case. So all of those things, with their prescribed time frames between the time of notification and the time of any kind of action, are the things that go into that estimated 6 months, 6 weeks to 2 months at the minimum. And that's if everything goes smoothly.
And now clarify, are you talking about the proposed change and some of the improvements, if you will, if they were adopted, or are you talking about the existing ordinance?
That's the way it exists now. The proposed change, really the key factor in the proposed change is that rather than dealing with each individual who requests a hearing and then setting up a hearing for that particular person with a hearing officers are few and far between and hard to schedule these days. We tried last season, and about the middle of the season, maybe June or July, we were advised that the first available hearing would be in December of 2012. That doesn't do us any good. So what we are proposing to do, or what proposing for your consideration, is to have pre-scheduled hearing dates throughout the year, actually, and collect any of the hearing requests or those that we decide to take to hearing as one group and take those on predetermined days, which might speed up the getting to the hearing process. But the rest of those timelines would still apply, as far as I understand.
Thank you very much. You also mentioned the other major issue of resources, which I'm sure we'll discuss at some point this morning. But in your report, you mentioned another curious item that's curious to me. You mentioned some the cases that were left hanging for lack of ability resource-wise, and your intention to eventually take a look at those. Well, since we're talking about a plant that would have been harvested, what good would it do to continue with those open cases?
The open cases that I was referring to were cases that came in that were non-cultivation.
Okay.
My point was that while the cultivation program was being implemented this past year, our code enforcement officer was devoted 100% to that program. And these other cases that came in, 88 during that time that were non-cultivation,
okay,
and then
good.
20 that were already in process, were put way on the back shelf because we didn't have the ability to handle both.
I understand. Thank you for the clarification.
Other questions, Mr. Simon, at this point? Thank you, Mr. Simon. Sheriff Bosenko. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, members of the board. Tom Bosenko, Sheriff. I concur with the statements by Dr. Deckert and Mr. Simon. The growing of the marijuana under the 215 or the medical purposes has blossomed, so to speak, in Shasta County, and it is overwhelming. When the season started with the code, the ordinance, I think those restrictions that were within the land use ordinance were reasonable. The more difficult part was the enforcing of them due to limited resources between resource management and the sheriff's office. We worked closely with code enforcement to assist them in investigating these code violations. There were many reports coming in, 5 to 10 per day to our marijuana enforcement team, which we also passed on to code enforcement, and we were looking at some of the most egregious violations to go out and do code enforcement actions to assist the officer. There was many impacts and complaints from neighbors due to the odors of the growing plant, traffic from people coming onto the other's property, frequenting the neighbors and grow sites, complaints of generators, complaints of fencing and armed personnel at some of these grow sites. And we've seen this as a trend that has developed statewide, primarily from the Central Valley area in California, moving north to the Northern California, Shasta County areas, in which growers predominantly have grown on public lands, U.S. Forest Service, out in the forest, and then moved into the valley floors to grow still commercially, but under the guise of the Compassionate Use Act, Prop 215. The staffing, both for code enforcement, planning department, and for the sheriff's office, is at very much a minimum, and that's why we combine partially for numbers to assist, but for the protection of the safety of the code enforcement officer. Those personnel, that person, where there's only one for the county, is not a peace officer and is an unarmed civilian. And sometimes at these grow sites, the people are not receptive or friendly to law enforcement or to code enforcement officers. The changes that are being proposed that may go through the whole process, if approved, again with the off-ramps for final approval by the board, excuse me, are reasonable. If moved to indoor detached structures, it makes it much more obvious if there's a violation of the land use ordinance if they're being grown outside. I do concur that the abatement process does need to be streamlined or pre-scheduled, but still allow for the proper due process and timeliness for the case to be heard, to be legally held as binding. As you know, with the impacts of prison realignment, AB 109, there's been an uptick in crime, an uptick in violence, thefts, and other crimes throughout the county. My staff, my deputies, are at an all-time low for patrol staffing and in detectives, and it has a huge impact in trying to divert resources. We are working very hard at trying to get our vacancies filled, but even if approved by the board of additional staff for the sheriff's office, it would still take a number of months to get those personnel recruited, hired, and trained, and then we're going to be past another grow season. And the bottom line is the enforcement of any ordinance for the rules and timeliness for the abatement process. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Questions?
Questions? Sheriff Pasenko? Thank you, Sheriff Pasenko.
Thank you.
While this is not a public hearing per se, we welcome hearing your comments this morning. May I see a show of hands of the individuals that would like to address the board this morning? Now, may I see a show of hands of those who raise their hands who would like to make an effective presentation this morning? All right. Experience tells us that there are certain ingredients to a successful presentation. Number one, that presentation is respectful. Respectful to the staff, respectful to the board, respectful to the people in the audience. Two, the presentation should be non-repetitious. You may want to say something that another individual has previously said. Please abbreviate your comments. Your comments should be succinct and well organized. And please address the board. Those are the ingredients of a successful presentation, experience tells us. Now, I'm going to call for about a 10-minute recess so that folks can go out and put some money in the meters or use the restrooms, and then we'll get started and we'll hear what you have to say.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.